So it's midnight and I'm just starting to sew now, because why not? I accidentally took a 3-hour nap today, so now I'm kind of wide awake. So I figured now was as good a time as any to sew. Please don't take my shirt personally. I didn't realize I was going to be talking to the camera today, and I also didn't realize it said we're doomed during a big pandemic. Anyway, sewing. So between prepping video content and non-sewing related busyness over the last couple of days, this is my first time working on this blouse in 4 days. I'm under quarantine, so you'd think that I would have all the time in the world to sew, but that did not turn out to be the case. But I'm putting more effort into it right now, and the goal is I'm getting this blouse done within the next 24 hours. I can do it. I feel good about that goal. I'll feel better if I stop rambling and actually sew. So thanks to COVID-19, my deadline for this project got pushed back a little bit. So I'm trying to use that to my advantage. So I decided I'm going to try and add a little bit of detail work to this 1910s gown. One of the things I decided to do was to add these little tucks, because I just figured that gives it a little bit more interest, I guess. And it's one of those things that's kind of low maintenance to do, but just kind of adds some detail to it. And I feel like that when you're making an all white outfit, you need a little bit of detail work. This top bit here is about the size of the pattern that I cut out, minus the seam allowance. So in order to get these little tucks in here, I actually extended out 5 inches from where I wanted the finished edge to be. That allowed me to tuck this bit under twice and add these little tucks. Okay, so now let's focus on trying to get this piece like that. So first things first, I'm actually going to just fold this over 1 inch, and that's going to be my finished edge for now. I'm actually going to fold over 1 more inch later, but I'm going to wait to do that until after my tucks are done. So I better get pressing. So I have my inch pressed over and I just kind of sewed it down to secure it. I'm not worried about how the salvage looks or if their edge is raw, because I'm going to fold it over 1 more time later. So that's not a concern for me right now. Right now, I'm currently pressing the first tuck into the fabric. So what I'm doing is I am measuring 1 inch from my stitching and I am pressing it down. Now when I take this over to my sewing machine, I'm actually going to stitch a 1/2 inch away from my tuck, and that will be what forms my tuck. And I will continue doing this 3 times because I'm aiming to have 3 tucks here. So here we go. Alright, so hopefully this goes smoothly. Now that I have my first tuck secure, I'm just giving my stitches a quick press to set them. And then I'm going to repeat this whole process all over again. So I'm going to go 1 inch from my stitching. Right here, I'm going to go 1 inch. And I'm going to press it again. There we go. And then once I bring this over to my sewing machine, I'm going to stitch at a 1/2 inch away from this pressed edge. And that will give me my second tuck. And then I'm going to do it 1 more time for my third tuck. So bear with me for a moment. They add a little bit of detail to a garment without having to spend a ton of money. So you don't have to buy trim, you don't have to buy lace, but it still is going to look nice. Hopefully. All 3 tucks are secured and they've been pushed away from the edge. Now I'm going to turn over the finished edge one more time, just because this is going to sound very silly, but the main reason why I'm just folding it over one more time is because I ended up having 1 inch left over between where the pattern should have ended and where it actually ended. So I decided rather than add one more pleat, because I thought 4 would look odd, I thought 3 looked better. So instead I decided I was just going to give the edge one more turn, and that ended up getting me to the width I needed to be. There's always a way to be creative with these kind of things. And the way that's going to work out is this edge is going to be underneath this pleat. So I'm just going to fold the pleat over and stitch right down the middle, and that should secure the edge. So I was about to head to bed, and then I realized I only had about 8 minutes left to my audiobook. So I decided now would be a good time to finish up the back panel and the front panel. So I have the front panel here already finished, and I'm just finishing up the back panel now. Per the instructions, I folded my side edges and my top edge over by 1 inch, and then I mitered the corners. Now, I will be perfectly honest, I don't know if I did this right, but it works, so I'm sticking with it. So the way I did this was after I folded my edges over 1 inch on each side. You can see it's kind of an awkward overlap here. I unfolded my edges, and I have this little square here. So I folded it in right where that corner is, and then I just kind of refolded my edges so that little square was tucked on the inside instead of the outside. Went nice and tucked in. Not the neatest job in the whole wide world, but you know what? That's okay. And I already finished my edges using my serger. So now I'm just going to stitch this down along the edge, and my back panel is going to be all done. I think there's a good chance that I am in fact going to be able to finish this project tomorrow. So that is a very good feeling. Alright, so I got actual day job stuff done today, and I also baked garlic knots for dinner. So I'm just now getting to work on finishing this blouse. I still feel good about being able to get this done tonight. It's a little hard to see right now because of the white on white, but I have the front panel and the back panel both pinned to the sides, so this is all going to be one piece now. Alright, this angle is marginally better. So the front panel is here, and I have it overlapping 1.5 inches from the edge. So right now the plan is I'm going to stitch right on top of my tuck lines, and I'm going to be doing that on the front and the back, and hopefully that is a pretty straightforward process. Once I have the front and the back panels attached, I'm going to stitch up my side seams. I'm going to add my facing to my sleeves. I'm also planning on running the bottom edge through my serger. I could do a tiny hem, but I don't want there to be an obvious line through the skirt, so I figured just running it through my serger is the best way to keep this nice and inconspicuous underneath the skirt. Today is April 15th. I haven't been in my sewing room since March. So, I'm kinda really excited to be sewing again. I was working on my costume drama video, and that took a very long time. I think I was editing it for a month straight, so I'm kind of really glad that I'm finally done that video. I'm really proud of how it turned out though, so if you haven't seen it yet, give it a watch. If you want. Don't let me tell you how to live your life. But before I start sewing, I have mail. I was not expecting mail because we're under quarantine, but I actually have something from March 21st, and I have something from April 6th. So I'm shocked, and I feel really bad that it took me so long to get this, but I kind of wasn't expecting anything, so thank you. Look at the cute bunny sticker. I think I need to get myself a letter opener so I'm not like butchering envelopes anymore. Aw, this is so cute. It says for somebody special. As you can see, because I'm assuming you can read. Alright, it says, Melissa, wishing you bright and happy moments this Easter. Keep the puppy pictures coming. Have an amazing Easter. Michelle, hashtag Historica Dyer. Michelle's one of my followers on Instagram and on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really love this. Put it right on the corkboard. Alright, now we have an envelope. Oh! There's something in there! I guess I had to show my manners and read the card first, right? Aw. Barbara wants to know how I'm doing. She hopes I'm hanging in here. And she just wanted to stop and say hi. And she said I don't have to mention I received this. But I did already, so... Whoops. Thank you, Barbara. Let's see what this is. And for the record, I'm doing perfectly fine. We are staying happy and healthy and inside. So my household is doing just fine right now. Thank you for asking. Look how pretty this is. She made a little envelope out of a page from a book. Oh, this is exciting. Let's see. Oh my. Look how lovely that is. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love this. Thank you. Oh my goodness, look at that. She sent me a locket. This is beautiful. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm gonna put it on right now. Oh, it's the perfect length and everything. Barbara, thank you so much. I absolutely love this. Thank you. You just absolutely made my day. I guess it's time to actually get some work done. This is an incredibly random thing to be excited about, but I'm working with the TVE30 1911 narrow panel skirt from True Victorian, and this skirt is all on one sheet of paper. I don't remember the last time I did a skirt that was on one sheet of paper. I can't wait to see how this turns out. Alright, so I've been busy the last couple of days. As you can see, I traced out my pattern and it's already been discarded to the top of my table. So down here I have the pieces that I cut out using that pattern. And every piece has been made up of the linen fabric and then flat lined with cotton, just to try and give it a little bit more body. As you can see, I already sewed the darts for the sides. And I've also already made up the waistband, which is a very unique looking waistband. I think this is actually the first time I've made a waistband that has darts in it. And this is because this bottom edge here is going to be what sits at the waist. The rest is going to sit slightly above the waist, so it has to be a little wider. But I already have this done. I even already have the hooks and eyes on. I'm hoping putting them on now was the right choice. We'll see. And this is actually going to be sitting inside the skirt instead of on top of the skirt. So can't wait to see how that turns out. Yeah, it's really interesting seeing how different the time periods are when it comes to dress construction. Because the skirt's pretty narrow, it's going to have a kick pleat at the bottom, which is something that I don't think I've ever made that before, so that should be interesting. Right now I have my two side pieces and my front piece. My back piece is actually pinned to the dress form, so I don't get confused with the front piece, because I've been known to do that for too similar, so I figured I might as well just try to avoid that ahead of time. Usually with the other dresses that I make, I have a decent idea of how things go together, and as a result, I don't follow the instructions as closely as I should, but this is foreign territory, so I'm going to be following them pretty closely. So the next thing I have to do is I have to base the front to the side seams with a 1 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to be ripping the seam out later, so it has to be basted. So that should be interesting. Alright, let's give that a shot. Okay, so per the instructions, I bumped up my stitch length to the highest it'll go, which in my machine's case is a 7. And I have my little measuring tool here. I'll put a link to where you can buy one of these in the description because this thing is very useful. I use it pretty often, honestly. As you can see, this little tool shows you certain lengths. So you got like a 1/2 inch, you have 1 1/2 inches, 5/8 of an inch. But the one I'm going to go for, because I need 1 1/4 inches, is I'm going to go for the 2-inch mark here. I'm going to go by this 2-inch line, but I'm only going to go up to where this little bit of metal, because that's going to be 1 1/4 inch. So this measuring tool is actually good for more than just the measurements that are printed on here. So this was definitely worth the, I don't know, $3 that I spent to buy this. I don't quite remember. But anyway, yeah, highly recommend using this if you need it. One thing I forgot to mention until after I actually started sewing is that on the front piece, one side kind of extends, you can see it kind of extends past the edge for a couple of inches, and that's because this is where the placket's going to be. So I actually had to not have this lined up to the edge, but actually have it back that 1/2 inch. So rather than have this completely matching up, I had to back it up that 1/2 inch for this little bit of length here. Alright, so measuring again, going by the edge of my fashion fabric, not this lining that overlaps a bit. Alright, here we are. I'm also going to slightly lessen the tension on my machine so that when I pull out these stitches later, it's a little bit easier than if they were as tight as they usually are. Alright, now I'm going to sew. So you'll notice I'm not back stitching here, but I'm going to kind of let these tails hang loose so I can grab them later. So right where my stitches ended, I'm going to continue onward. And no back stitch. Alright, so that's one side done. Time to do the other side, I think. Right? Yes, time for the other side. Alright. So the skirt is mostly assembled now. You can see we have these nice little tucks here, which is kind of fun. They stop pretty low, and there's the kick pleat. You can see it's a bit deeper there, and it's not tacked down, so she'll be able to hopefully walk easily. I thought this was kind of interesting. It actually has a front side opening as opposed to side or back, and it's concealed by that little pleat. Tuck? Tuck. It's a tuck, not a pleat. The tuck is stitched down all the way like that. Alright, so now the goal is I am going to work on the kind of a bit of an overskirt for this. In one of the pictures of Alice Paul, she's wearing a skirt that's kind of similar to this. It's actually what I based this off of. But it has a bit of an overskirt. So I'm going to be working on that next. The idea is I'm going to drape it directly on my dress form. I'm going to add pleats on the side. I don't know how well you can see this, but I'm going to add pleats on the side that are going to be about the same as the pleats on the actual skirt. And I also want to make it look like these tucks continue down into the overskirt. So it almost looks like this is a whole separate little jacket thing that's on top, which is how I think the original was constructed, but I didn't have a pattern to match that, so here we are. Alright, so I'm going to get working on that right now. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so for whatever reason, I have still not finished this dress. I've had work at home stuff, I've had taxes, I've had other obligations, and honestly, I've been spending a lot of time on Animal Crossing. but it ends tonight. I am finishing this dress tonight. I'm at least finishing the skirt tonight. It's happening. Now I just have to do it. Well, I did get the skirt done at least. Kinda. All that's really left are the snaps. I decided to put snaps on here because I thought it would be a little bit easier for the interpreter. But snaps requires a hammer, and it's after midnight, and Evan and Maisie are both asleep on the couch, so that seems a little bit too rude. So the snaps will have to go for tomorrow morning, but in the meantime, at least the skirt's assembled and hemmed and there's a waistband. So it's actually kind of interesting because I've never seen a waistband on the inside of the skirt before, at least not that I've made. So I thought that was kind of a fun little trick. I also top stitched along the top here, but I'm not too concerned because you're not going to be able to see it because of the belt. So yeah, snaps tomorrow. For the belt, I'm using True Victorian's TV 492 1890s Victorian corselettes pattern. This pattern is about 20 years out of date for what I'm going for right now, but that's okay. I'm not really looking to recreate this perfectly. I just wanted a base for this belt that I'm making. So I have my muslin pieces cut out already. So I'm going to quickly baste these together and take this over to a dress form so I can get it into the shape I want. So then I'll be able to cut out the actual fabric and hopefully get this done pretty quickly. Right now I'm working on the sash for the 1910s dress. The sash is made up of 3 panels of the main fabric and then I believe 7 panels of the interlining. The first thing I did was I separated them out with the front panels versus the back panels. So you can see this one's already done. This one was the one main fabric and then 2 of the interlining fabrics. So what I did for each piece is I took my fabric and I made a little bit longer than my interlining pieces. I then ran gathering stitches along the edges of my fabric and then I stitched it to my interlining at the top and the bottom. So now it's kind of loose, as you can see. So now I'm just going to pull these gathering threads. I'm going to gather that up. So hopefully this will make it look like it's just kind of fabric tied around her waist rather than an actual structured garment, which it is, because I wanted it to still sit snugly against her. I don't know if this is an actual technique they use then, but it's the one I'm using. So I'm going to get these a little bit more even. One way to make sure that the thread stays where it needs to is you stick a pin on the edge and then you wrap the thread around the pin in a figure 8 And now no matter how much I pull this side's not going to come undone, which is helpful. So now I'm going to gather up this side as well, and then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine. I'm going to stitch the gathered sides down, and then I'm going to add it to this. So I'll sew the two side seams together. And then I will add the boning channels here and here, which will hopefully give a little bit more structure. And then it'll be time for the lining. So my original plan was to add these little, I guess kind of like an overskirt kind of thing. I wanted it to look like the pleated part of the bodice just kind of continues downward. But honestly, I don't think I need it. I think it's actually a little bit more elegant without it. Looks kind of frumpy with the extra material. So I think I might scrap that part of the project. Which means I would just have to finish the waistband and she'll be all set. All I'll be left would be adding a little bit of purple to the hat, and this commission will be done. Alright, it's about 1:30 in the morning. The world's being awful right now and I can't sleep, so I'm going to sew. As you can see, I am so close to finishing this. I just have this little gap that I need to cover. So my solution for that was I have this little strip of fabric here, and I thought maybe if I find a way to cover the gap, that'll be good enough. I think it looks alright, and it definitely makes the gathered bits here make a bit of sense. So I think I might go with that. I just need to figure out the best way to secure it. This is Editing Mel. I'm going to end the video here because this is the end of the bulk of the 1910s dress. The other half of this commission will be featured in the last part of this video, which should be up in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching this one. Thank you for watching this entire series, if you've been watching it all. I appreciate that everyone has stuck by me, even though it is taking me 2 years to post this series. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon for their patience and support. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in 2 weeks with the last part of this commission. Finally! Bye!